Hey there, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video we're going to learn the 2 to 4 player game, Marvel Villainous Infinite Power, designed by Prospero Hall and published by Ravensburger, who helped sponsor this video. Sure, we all admire heroes like Captain Marvel, Thor, and Black Panther, but have you ever wanted to be a Marvel villain? To see if you have what it takes to be good at being bad? Well, now you can find out. So join me at the table, and let's learn how to play. To set up, each player chooses one of the 5 included villains, taking the matching mover piece. There's Thanos, Hela, Taskmaster, Killmonger, and Ultron. We'll set up Thanos and Hela in this video, but bring out the other villains as necessary to help with examples. Then take the domain board and guide for your character along with one of these double-sided reference cards, and put your domain in front of you with your villain on their portrait here. Your villain comes with a deck of cards that shows their name here on the back, and you'll shuffle and place these face down by your domain to form your villain deck. Then draw 4 cards to form your starting hand. Your villain also comes with a deck of 11 fate cards as named here, and these all have the same backs, but their fronts will have your villain symbol in this corner. You'll also find a reminder of the various villain symbols here on your reference card. So these are all the fate cards for Thanos, and these are the ones for Hela. There are also 15 common fate cards that will show no villain symbol in the corner. You'll always use those in every game, and now you combine all of the fate cards together and then shuffle them into a single fate deck that you'll place in the middle of the play area. If this is your very first time playing Marvel Villainous, they recommend going through the fate deck and removing any cards labeled here on the bottom as an event, but we'll be leaving them in for this video. Some villains have unique setup instructions, and these will be detailed inside their villain guide. With Thanos, we're told to place the 6 double-sided Infinity Stone tiles with the item side, as labeled here, face up near the fate deck. Now, form a supply of these power tokens and these strength tokens, putting them all inside of this vault. If someone is playing as Hela, then they'll make use of these soul mark tokens, so we'll make a supply of those nearby as well. Now, whoever last read a comic book becomes the first player, and the person to their left receives one of these power tokens. When you collect power tokens, you place them here on your villain's portrait. If there was a 3rd or 4th player, they would take 2 power tokens each. The first player doesn't start with any, but they get the benefit of going first. Your villain will have its own objective that you'll be trying to achieve, which is found here on the portrait space of their domain and also in the villain's guide. All the players should read these out loud so everyone at the table knows what everyone else is trying to do. And that's the setup. In Marvel Villainous Infinite Power, you and the other players will be competing to see who can achieve their objective first by playing cards that represent powerful allies, items, and effects. It's a good idea to read through your villain guide because it will explain your objective and provide advice on how to use certain cards in your villain deck. You'll also have to deal with several pesky heroes and game-changing events from the Fate deck that will try to foil your plans. The game is played over a series of turns, starting with the first player and then going clockwise around and around the table. On your turn, the first thing you'll do is move your villain from its current location to a different location in your domain. You can't stay in the same space or move to a location in another villain's domain. Now, the first time you take a turn, you'll actually be leaving this area here, and then you'll go on to one of these 4 spots. But you can never go back here after that. Once you've moved, you'll find symbols at your location, and these represent the different actions that you can now perform. And you can resolve them in any order you wish, but they're optional. You don't have to perform every action there. You can do only some, or even none if you don't want to. Your reference card lists all the possible actions that you might find in your domain, so let's look at how each of these work. This is the symbol for gaining power, and when resolving it, you collect a number of these power tokens from the vault equal to the number printed inside its icon. So here, Hela would gain 2 power, and these you always store on your villain's portrait. Now, if Hela had instead gone here, she would have only collected 1 power. And let's pretend she did go here, because next I want to talk to you about this symbol for the Fate action and how you resolve it. First, reveal the top card of the shared Fate deck, and then choose another player to target. You can never target yourself unless you're specifically told to. Not all heroes will have a villain symbol in this corner, but if one does, like we see here, this can still be played against any opponent, but it's most effective against that particular villain. There are 4 types of fate cards, as shown here at their bottoms. You have heroes, items, effects, and events, and each work a little differently. To play a hero, you choose an opponent, and then place that hero within this outline of any location in their domain. This will block those actions, preventing that player from being able to use them. Now, for example, if Thanos went to this area, he could only resolve these 2 actions and not the 2 that have been covered up. You can even have multiple heroes on a single location, just stack them like this. Heroes have a strength value here, in this case 3 for Captain America and 4 for Vision. They will also have an ability here, and sometimes these are resolved just once when the card is placed, or other times they'll have an ongoing effect. For example, Captain America, when played, will put a +1 strength token on himself and on all other heroes in the domain where he was placed. Strength tokens are double-sided and they come from the vault. If you're told to increase the strength of a card, you use this side, or you flip it over if you're told to decrease a card's strength. Either way, Captain America now has a total strength of 4. It's even possible for a hero to have their strength reduced to 0 if they get too many negatives, but they will still stay where they are, blocking the actions that they cover. The only way to remove a hero from your domain is to vanquish it, which we'll learn about later. If a fate card is referred to as an effect, then once it's played, you will follow the text on the card and then immediately place it into a fate discard pile that you'll create near the deck. And if you ever run out of cards in the fate deck when you would need to draw one, just reshuffle the fate discard pile into a new deck and then draw as necessary. The fate deck can also have item cards in it, like this Odin Force, and these will tell you to attach them to another card, meaning you just place them under the card to show that it's attached like this, keeping its effect visible here. Now that said, if you ever draw a fate card but you can't resolve it, for example, this says to attach it to a hero, but maybe there's no heroes in play. In that case, you just discard the fate card, but you don't draw a replacement. Another type of card you might draw from the deck are events. Now remember, in your first game you may wish to remove these, but we've left them in, so let's see how they work. This one is called Lockdown at the Raft, and it does not have a villain icon in the corner, and that means it's a global event that affects all the players. Now, whenever you reveal a global event, you place it in the center of the play area unless there's already a global event in play, in which case you just discard the event you drew because there can only be one global event in play at a time. The exception is if you want to play the game in its most difficult mode, which the rules call Undying. In that mode, you can have any number of events in play at a time, but this will make things very challenging for the villains, so you'll probably only want to play this mode once you're quite experienced with the game. Either way, after placing an event, all the players will follow its instructions for as long as it's in play, and we'll see how you can remove events a little bit later. If a drawn event has a villain icon in the corner, then this is a targeted event, and when these are drawn, they only apply to the villain whose icon is on the card. So you'll put this above that villain's domain, even if there's already a global event in play. These events are specific to that villain, hurting their ability to complete their objective. And again, we'll see a little later how you can remove those pesky heroes and these events from play. But now let's get back to some of the other action symbols that you might resolve on your turn. This is the symbol for playing a card from your hand. Many will have a cost and power tokens that you must pay, shown here. Just return that amount of power tokens from your domain to the supply. If the cost is 0, then the card is free to play. But in order to play a card, you must also be able to follow any of its written requirements here. For example, this says to relocate a hero with an attached soul mark, but if you didn't have a hero with a soul mark, then you couldn't play this. We won't go over each individual card in this video as there's just so many, but how they work is printed directly on them, and the rules that you learn here will help you understand how they work. Your villain guide will also have several helpful tips about the cards in your deck, so don't forget to refer to that as well. There are 4 types of cards you might find in your villain deck: allies, items, effects, and specialties as labeled here at their bottoms. And each works a little differently than the rest, so let's take a look at an example of each. Here we have Hela's Swordsman, which is an ally, and the number here shows that ally's strength, in this case 2. The higher the number, the stronger the ally, and strong allies are useful for defeating powerful heroes, as we'll see later. Some allies also have special abilities printed in their text box here. In this case, the swordsman gains 1 strength for each other swordsman in your discard pile. Whenever you play an ally, you'll need to decide where it will go, and one option is to add it to any location within your domain. But it doesn't have to be played at the same location as your villain. It can be put there, but it doesn't have to be. Once you've decided on the location, just place it underneath of it like this. You can have any number of allies at the same location, just stack them underneath of each other like this so you can still see their abilities and strengths. Now another option would be to instead play the ally to an event that might be in play, and you just set it beside it like this. If it's a global event, then other players can also assign their allies to it as well, and again, there's no limitation to how many can be here. Or instead, you might assign your ally to a targeted event, but only the villain that is affected by it can put their allies there. Another card type you can play are items like Thanos' Space Throne, and when played, you add it to any location in your domain. Items might add new actions to a location like this, or provide other special powers and abilities. Some items like Ultron's Impervious Alloy tell you to attach them to an ally, so you must have an ally already in your domain, and then it's placed underneath it like this. And there's no limit to the number of items that can be attached to a single ally. Another type of card you might encounter are specialties, and when their cost is paid, if any, you set them to the right of your domain in the area for them here. You can have any number of these, and they'll provide an ongoing ability for your villain to use anytime their effect would apply. It doesn't matter which location you put your villain in, you will still have access to these abilities during your turn. The last type of villain card is an effect. These will provide a one-time ability. You just pay the cost here, follow the text, and then you place this into your villain discard pile, which you'll create in the space beside your deck. So those are all the possible types of villain cards you can play, but remember, you can't just play a card from your hand anytime you want to. To play a card, you have to have this symbol in the space you moved your villain to, and you can only play 1 card for each of those symbols you see. So by going here, I could play 1 card. But if I had gone here, then I could play up to 2. Now let's talk about the action for this symbol, which is called Activate, and we're going to use Taskmaster's domain to illustrate this. Many cards have abilities that resolve when they're played or whenever their condition occurs, while others will have this symbol, which means their effect will only occur when they're activated. In this case, the player has Lesson Plan as one of their specialties, and this Activate symbol means you must use the Activate action in order to gain this benefit. And sometimes there'll be an additional cost, like this 1 power, which you have to pay. Then you can resolve this effect, and here it says to find an item or effect from your discard pile or deck and put it in your hand. Whenever an ability tells you to find something, look through the specified area, in this case either the discard pile or deck, and then take the card from wherever it is and follow any further instructions. If you end up looking through your deck though, make sure you reshuffle it when you're done. Here's a similar situation using one of Killmonger's specialties, and this tells you that before moving your villain, you can discard a card from your hand in order to find Killmonger's Fury, which is one of the cards in his deck, but it doesn't specify where to look for it. In a case like this, first check to see if that card is already in play somewhere within a domain or at an event. If it's not in play, then search the discard pile for it, and if it's not in a discard pile, search the deck for it. Reveal the card to your opponents, and then reshuffle the deck. The next action we're going to learn about is this one called Relocate. Resolving this action allows you to move an ally or an item that doesn't require being attached to an ally from one location in your domain to a different one. Or instead, if you have an ally in an opponent's domain, you can move it back to a location within your own domain. Just keep in mind, this relocate action does not let you move an ally to a location in an opponent's domain. You can only add allies or items to another player's domain if a card specifically lets you, like the ability on Thanos' Deliver Judgment card. That said, when you resolve a relocate action, you can move an ally to a global event or your own targeted event. Also keep in mind that if you have an item attached to an ally, then when you move the ally, all of its items will travel with it. Now, one of the reasons that you're planning on relocating allies and items is so that you can defeat heroes in events that stand between you and your objective. As we saw earlier, heroes can block your action spaces and cause other problems for you, and some of your opponent's allies can do the same. If you want to defeat a hero or an opponent's ally at a location in your domain, you need to use this Vanquish action, and it doesn't matter what space your villain mover is in when you resolve this effect. The vanquishing can happen somewhere else. For example, if Thanos is here, he can use this Vanquish action to target any one hero in any domain where Thanos has allies. We'll say for this example that Adam Warlock is here on the Infinity Well, and Thanos has 3 allies here, Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, and the Legions of Thanos, and I've just spread them out so they're easier to see. You now compare the strength of the character you wish to defeat with the total strength of the ally or allies that you choose to use, including any bonuses from items, effects, and tokens they may have. If that total is greater than or equal to the strength of the character you choose to vanquish, then that character is defeated. Here, Thanos could either use Ebony Maw and Proxima, or Ebony Maw and the Legion to get a total strength equal to or higher than Adam Warlock's strength of 6. In either case, with Adam defeated, he is placed into the Fate discard pile, while only the allies that were used will go into Thanos' discard pile. So let's just say that Thanos chose to use these 2 allies. The remaining ally that was not used in the attack will just stay in that location. If a hero or ally is defeated that had items attached to it, those items are discarded as well. And just keep in mind, if you don't have enough strength at a location to defeat a hero, then you can't take that Vanquish action. Also, the Vanquish action can only target a single hero, so if there are several at a location, you pick just one of them to defeat. I had mentioned earlier that it's possible for a hero to have its strength reduced to 0 from these tokens. And that hero will stay where they are and continue to block the actions that they're covering. To defeat this hero, you still need to vanquish it with an ally, but afterwards, that ally is not discarded. Once a hero is no longer covering action symbols, you're free to use them again. And if you uncover symbols on the location that you're currently resolving, then you can use those symbols during that turn. It is possible to have more than one hero at a location, and after defeating one, you choose any other hero there to place back on top of the location so that the actions stay blocked. Some heroes, like Thor, have this protector icon, and if you are choosing to vanquish at their location, you must defeat that hero before you can defeat anyone else. In other words, Hela couldn't target Black Widow with a vanquish action. They'd have to vanquish Thor instead. And if you had multiple heroes with the protector symbol at a location, then you would pick which one to defeat first. Some villains like Taskmaster have abilities that will allow them to play their allies into another player's domain and then cover up actions just like a hero would. However, they can't then use a vanquish action to have those allies attack their opponent in their own domain. Instead, this card is just here to cover up actions and slow their opponent down. And that covers the Vanquish action, leaving us just one more to go over. And this one here allows you to discard as many cards as you wish from your hand. This can be helpful because after you've completed all of the actions at your chosen location that you can or wish to perform, the final step of your turn is always to draw cards from your villain deck until you have 4 cards in hand. So discarding can be a good way to get rid of things you don't need right now in the hopes of drawing something more useful. There's also no limit to how many cards you can have in your hand, so if at the end of a turn you're already holding 4 or more cards, then you won't draw any new ones. Also, if your villain deck ever runs out, then you reshuffle your discard pile to form a new deck and then continue to draw as necessary. But otherwise, after drawing back up to 4 cards, your turn is over and then the next player in clockwise order takes their turn. Okay, so as you can imagine, you'll spend most of your time working towards fulfilling your own villain's objective. But remember, global events can enter the game, and these will hurt all of the villains, meaning that you may occasionally team up in order to deal with these. Whenever you play or relocate an ally, you can always place them at an event instead of a location in your domain. You then compare the total strength of all allies at the event, and if this is ever equal to or greater than the strength requirement of the event, you resolve it immediately. You place the event in the Fate discard pile and all allies used to overcome it in their respective villain discard piles. But any villain who had an ally that helped defeat the event then receives the reward shown here at the bottom. Remember, an individual villain may have their own targeted event in front of themselves, and only they can assign allies to it. But once they have a combined strength among those allies equal to or greater than the required strength here, they resolve it in the same way, discarding all the related cards and then gaining the reward here listed at the bottom. Another important thing to remember is that the effects on cards can break the rules of the game. If I've said you can't do something in this video, but then a card says that you can, then the card wins out in that case. For example, I said you can't play your allies to another player's domain and then attack them there. And that is the rule. But Thanos, for example, has cards that do allow him to put allies in other players' domains, and then he can attack them there. Because that's how he'll collect these Infinity Stone tiles that he needs to win the game. Thanos actually has quite a unique objective, so let's take a moment and we'll see how that works. The Infinity Stone tiles are a special kind of item, and certain cards that Thanos plays will tell another player to gain one. They will choose one at random and then attach it to one of their allies. If they only had one ally and it already had a stone attached to it, then it would get the new one as well. On the other hand, if this card was played and that player didn't have an ally at all, then they would get to play one from their hand for free and then attach the stone to it. However, if they don't have any allies in their hand either, they would reveal cards from their deck one at a time until they find an ally. They would then play it for free, attach the stone to it, and then reshuffle any revealed cards back into their deck. An ally with an Infinity Stone attached to it cannot be relocated to an event or to another player's domain, but its controlling player now has access to this powerful activate effect that's printed on it. Also be aware that if the ally is defeated by anything other than Thanos vanquishing it, the stone is not discarded. It remains on that location as an unattached item and cannot be attached to another character. However, Thanos has a special rule in his guide that allows him to use the Relocate action to move an ally from his domain to a location with an Infinity Stone, even if it's in someone else's domain. If no ally is attached to the stone, then Thanos immediately claims it. On the other hand, if an opponent's ally had been attached to it, then Thanos would have to use a Vanquish action to defeat that ally, and once it's defeated, Thanos' ally would claim the stone. Then, with a future Relocate action, Thanos could bring the character back to his own domain, bringing the Infinity Stone with it. Once a stone has been brought to Thanos' domain, he flips the tile over to its specialty side, places it to the right of his domain, and now he will have this new powerful ability that he can use. If Thanos can collect all of the Infinity Stones in this way, then he wins. As we know, each villain has their own unique objective, which again, you'll find explained in detail in their personal guide. And turns will continue until a player has completed their objective, immediately making them the winner. And that's how you play Marvel Villainous Infinite Power. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. But until next time, thanks for watching.